The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Ambassador Krextar of the Vorthan Empire stood at the center podium, his forearms gesturing wildly as he addressed the assembled representatives of 27 different species. "The humans have responded to our ultimatum," Krextar announced, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through universal translators. "They are sending." He paused, checking the datapad in his lower right hand again. Certain he must have misread it. "They are sending one ship." Silence fell over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Then, slowly, a ripple of laughter began to spread through the crowd. The crystalline Zelathi representative chimed in harmonious amusement. The gaseous Nebulon delegate's form shifted in patterns that indicated mirth. Even the usually stoic mechanoids emitted what could only be described as electronic chuckles. "One ship?" The Caloran ambassador's tentacles writhed with amusement. "We demanded their complete surrender, threatened to blockade their entire solar system. And they send one ship?" Krextar's scales shifted to a deeper purple, indicating his own confusion. "Perhaps there has been a translation error. Our linguists are still learning their language patterns." "No error," confirmed Subcommander Thrak from his position at the tactical display. "Long-range sensors confirm. One vessel, designation UES Persistence, currently traveling at sublight speeds toward the rendezvous point." The laughter grew louder. The Vorthan Empire alone had committed 50 dreadnoughts to this operation. The other council members had contributed another 200 vessels of various classes. Against their combined fleet of 250 state-of-the-art warships, the humans had sent one. "What do we know about this vessel?" asked Ambassador Silica of the Crystalline Collective, her faceted form catching and reflecting the chamber's lights. Thrak manipulated the holographic display, bringing up a three-dimensional image of the human ship. It was unremarkable. A cylinder roughly 2 kilometers in length, with what appeared to be rotating sections for artificial gravity. No visible weapon ports. No energy shields that their sensors could detect. It looked more like a cargo hauler than a warship. "Initial scans indicate a crew complement of approximately 500, Thrak reported. "Standard fusion drives. No exotic matter reactors. No quantum weaponry signatures. Their technology appears to be at least 200 years behind ours. 500 crew?" The Droken representative's mandibles clicked in amusement. "My youngest hatchling's pleasure yacht has a larger crew than that. 5. Click. Click. 5. 5. 5. Admiral Korg of the Vorthan fleet stood from his seat, his massive frame casting shadows across the tactical display. "This is an insult. We offered them the chance to join the Galactic Council as a protectorate. They refused. We gave them the opportunity to surrender peacefully. And they respond with this. This joke? Perhaps they misunderstood," suggested the Etherian ambassador, her translucent form shimmering with uncertainty. "They are a young species after all. First contact was only 5 of their years ago." "No," Krextar said firmly. "Our communications were clear. Surrender unconditionally, or face the combined might of the Galactic Council. There can be no misunderstanding. Then they are either incomprehensibly stupid or incomprehensibly arrogant," Admiral Korg growled. "Either way, we will make an example of them. The galaxy must see what happens to those who defy the Council." The debate continued for hours. Some suggested sending a small squadron to deal with the human ship, to minimize resource expenditure. Others argued for the full fleet, to ensure a swift and decisive victory. The military commanders ran simulation after simulation, each one showing the same result. The human vessel would be vaporized within seconds of engagement. "What concerns me," said Professor Vrix of the science caste, adjusting her optical implants, "is that they seem so confident. No species acts with such apparent disregard for overwhelming odds, without reason." "Desperation," Admiral Korg dismissed. "They know they cannot win. So they send a token force to maintain their pride. It is a gesture. Nothing more." "But why one ship specifically?" Professor Vrix persisted. "Why not 3? Or 5? Or 10? One seems deliberate." You're overthinking it, the Admiral replied. They probably couldn't spare more than one. Their industrial base is limited to a single solar system. After all, as the debate wore on, long-range sensors continued to track the human vessel. It maintained a steady course, neither accelerating nor deviating. Its communications array remained active, but silent. It was like watching a single person walking calmly toward an army of thousands. Sub-Commander Yarrick of the Intelligence Division presented her analysis. We've been monitoring their home system since first contact. No major military buildup. No panic. Their civilian population seems unaware of the situation. Typical totalitarian control, someone suggested. They're keeping their population in the dark about their impending doom. Or they're confident in that one ship, Yarrick countered, though she sounded skeptical of her own words. The Council ultimately decided on a middle approach. 100 ships would meet the human vessel at the designated coordinates. The remaining 150 would remain in reserve, though nobody seriously believed they would be needed. As preparations began, Krex Tar found himself studying the image of the human ship again and again. There was something about it that bothered him. Not its appearance. It was almost laughably primitive compared to their own vessels. Not its size. The Vorthan dreadnoughts dwarfed it. It was something else. Something he couldn't quite identify. Ambassador, his aide approached. We've received a message from the human vessel. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human in a simple gray uniform. The creature had only 2 arms, 2 eyes, and no natural armor or weapons. By galactic standards, they were remarkably unremarkable. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Persistence, the human said, her voice calm and professional. We are approaching the designated coordinates. We come in peace, hoping for dialogue. Dialogue. Admiral Korg snarled. They were given their chance for dialogue. Now, they faced the consequences. But Krex Tar noticed something in the human's expression. Not fear. Not arrogance. Something else. The translator tagged it as determination. But that didn't seem quite right. Captain Chen, Krex Tar responded, you must realize your position. You face a fleet of 100 warships. Surrender now, and we may show mercy. The human's expression didn't change. Ambassador Krex Tar, I respect your position, but I must inform you that we cannot and will not surrender. We hope this demonstration will help you understand why. Demonstration? Krex Tar's scales shifted to a pattern of confusion. What demonstration? You'll see, Captain Chen replied. Persistence out. The communication ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Did she just... The Kelleran ambassador's tentacles twisted in disbelief. Did she just threaten us? 1 ship against 100? And she threatens us? Alert the fleet, Admiral Korg commanded. All weapons to ready status. If they want a demonstration, we'll give them one. As the hours passed and the human ship drew closer, tension in the chamber grew. Various species dealt with stress differently. The Vorthans sharpened their claws. The crystallines hummed at frequencies that set everyone's teeth on edge. And the nebulons swirled in increasingly agitated patterns. 20 minutes until intercept, Thrak announced. On the tactical display, the human ship continued its steady approach. The Council fleet had formed a perfect sphere around the intercept point, leaving no avenue for escape. It was a textbook deployment, used countless times to subdue rebellious species. Any change in the human vessel's status? Krex Tar asked. Negative. Same speed, same heading. No weapons charging, no shields raising. They're not even at battle stations. Madness, someone muttered. 15 minutes. 10. 5. Sir, a sensor operator called out. The human ship is doing something. The tactical display zoomed in on the Persistence. Along its hull, panels were sliding open. Small objects began emerging. Not weapons, but something else. They looked like probes. 36 objects deployed, Thrak reported. They're spreading out in a perfect sphere around their vessel. No weapon signatures. They appear to be scanning devices? Amand. Scanning devices. Scanning for what? Admiral Korg demanded. They can see our fleet perfectly well. Unknown, sir. But they're generating some kind of field. Our sensors can't penetrate it. A shield? No, sir. It's not stopping our scans. It's just, we can't understand what we're seeing. Like the data is there but makes no sense. 2 minutes to intercept. Admiral, the sensor operator's voice carried a note of concern. Something's happening to space around the human ship. On the display, the area around the Persistence began to shimmer. Not like a cloaking device or a shield, more like heat waves rising from hot pavement, distorting the view. Is that some kind of weapon? Krextar asked. I don't think so, Professor Vrick said, leaning forward with interest. The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. It's almost like but no, that's impossible. What's impossible? It looks like they're manipulating space-time itself, but not in any way our physics says should be possible. The math doesn't work unless. Her optical implants whirred as she ran calculations. Oh, by the 7 suns, Professor, they're not bending space-time. They're accessing something else. Something outside our 3-dimensional space. 1 minute to intercept. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen again, unbidden. Ambassador Krextar? Admiral Korg? Members of the Galactic Council? What you're about to witness is why Earth sent only one ship. We call it the Prometheus Protocol. It's not a weapon. It's a revelation. Enough of this, Admiral Korg roared. All ships, prepare to fire on my mark. I wouldn't do that, Captain Chen said calmly. You're about to learn something important about humanity. You see, when we received your ultimatum, we had a choice. We could have built warships. We could have created weapons. Instead, we chose to show you the truth. What truth? Krextar found himself asking, despite the Admiral's glare. That we don't need more than one ship, Chen replied. Because we have something you don't. Something that makes your entire fleet irrelevant. The shimmer around the Persistence intensified. The 36 probes pulsed in unison, and suddenly the tactical display went wild. Energy readings spiked to impossible levels. Gravitational anomalies appeared and disappeared. Quantum fluctuations that should have torn the ship apart instead seemed to flow around it like water. What are they doing? Someone screamed. They're opening a door. Professor Vrix whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. They're opening a door to somewhere else. And then, in the space around the single human ship, reality began to unfold like a flower. The Council fleet, for all their advanced technology and superior numbers, could only watch as something impossible happened before their eyes. The humans had sent one ship, and now, finally, the Galactic Council was about to understand why one ship was all they needed. The space around the human ship began to fold and twist in ways that made even the most experienced navigators feel nauseous. Where there had been empty vacuum, something else appeared. Not solid, not energy, but something that existed between definitions. All ships, hold fire, Professor Vrix shouted, overriding military protocols with scientific authority. Do not fire. We need to understand what we're seeing. Admiral Korg's hand hovered over the firing command. You have 10 seconds to explain, Professor, or I turn that ship into atoms. Look at the readings. Vrix's optical implants projected data directly onto the main screen. They're not in normal space anymore. They're partially phased into a higher dimension. If we fire now, we have no idea what will happen. Dimensional phase technology is theoretical at best, Subcommander Thrak protested. No species has achieved it. No species we know of, Vrix corrected. But look at these quantum signatures. They match the theoretical models perfectly. The humans have achieved what we thought impossible. On the screen, Captain Chen watched them with that same calm expression. Are you beginning to understand? When your explorers found Earth 5 years ago, you saw a young species with primitive technology. You saw an easy target for expansion. But you never asked the right questions. What questions? Krextar found himself drawn into dialogue despite the chaos around him. Why were we so calm when you arrived? Why did we accept your existence so easily? Why didn't we panic when beings from the stars suddenly appeared in our skies? Chen leaned forward slightly. The answer is simple. We already knew you were out there. Impossible, Admiral Korg snarled. Your technology couldn't detect us if we were standing on your planet. Our conventional technology, no, Chen agreed. But humanity learned long ago that there are other ways of seeing, other ways of knowing. What you're witnessing now is the culmination of a different path of development. The shimmer around the persistence intensified. The sensor operator's voice cracked with strain. Sir, I'm detecting. This can't be right. I'm detecting multiple versions of the same ship. Clarify. The persistence, sir. It's existing in multiple states simultaneously. Like it's here and not here at the same time. And the number is increasing. 2, 5, 12, 20. On the tactical display, ghost images of the human ship began to appear. Each one slightly different. Each one equally real. They overlapped and separated like double vision. But the sensors insisted they were all physically present. Quantum superposition on a macroscopic scale, Professor Vrix breathed. They've collapsed the barrier between quantum and classical physics. This is beyond anything in our science. Captain Chen. Krextar tried to maintain diplomatic composure. What is the purpose of this demonstration? To show you that everything you think you know about the universe is incomplete, Chen replied. Your Galactic Council has spent thousands of years perfecting one type of technology. One way of understanding reality. You've become so advanced in that narrow path that you've forgotten there might be other roads. Philosophical nonsense, Admiral Korg growled. Whatever trick you're pulling, it won't save you from... He was cut off as every alarm on every ship in the fleet began screaming simultaneously. Massive gravitic anomaly detected, Thrak shouted. No, wait, multiple anomalies. They're everywhere. The space around the Council fleet began to ripple. Not from the human ship. The distortions were appearing spontaneously throughout the entire area. Tiny points of impossible darkness winked into existence, each no larger than a pinprick but registering gravity wells that shouldn't exist. Micro-black holes? Someone gasped. No, Vrix said, her voice tight with concentration. Look at the event horizons. They're not spherical. They're doorways. As they watched, the pinpricks began to emit something. Not matter, not energy, but information. Pure, raw data that flooded their sensors with patterns that seemed random but felt purposeful. Captain Chen, Krextar's diplomatic training finally failed him. What have you done? We've shown you the truth, Chen said simply. Your fleet, your weapons, your shields. They all exist in three-dimensional space. But humans learned to think beyond those limits. We discovered that consciousness itself can touch higher dimensions. And once you can touch them, she gestured, and the ghost images of the persistence suddenly solidified. Where there had been one ship, now there were 50. Each one as real as the original. You can use them. Illusions, Admiral Korg insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Order your ships to run detailed scans, Chen suggested. Each version is physically present. Each one has mass, energy, and 500 living crew members. We exist in multiple states because we choose to. The scans confirmed it. 50 human ships now face the Council fleet, and the number was still growing. This violates conservation of mass and energy. A physicist from the mechanoid delegation transmitted. Only in 3 dimensions, Chen replied. In higher dimensional space, conservation laws work differently. Energy and matter can flow in ways your physics can't explain because you've limited yourselves to what you can see and touch. Incoming transmission from fleet units. Thrak reported, his voice strained. Multiple ships reporting system anomalies. Navigation computers are giving impossible readings. Some crews are reporting, "Sir, this sounds insane." Report, Some crews are reporting seeing themselves, other versions of themselves, on their own ships, like echoes or reflections, but solid. The pinprick doorways continued to multiply. The space around the fleet was becoming increasingly unstable. Not dangerous exactly, but wrong in a way that made every instinct scream warnings. "You're attacking us," Admiral Korg accused. "No," Chen said firmly. "If we were attacking, you'd know it. This is just presence. We're simply existing in the same space as you, but in our own way. The distortions you're experiencing are side effects. Your technology wasn't designed to handle multi-dimensional overlap." "Then stop it." "We will, once you understand. Tell me, Admiral, what would happen if we decided to truly weaponize this capability? What if every one of your ships suddenly found themselves facing not 50 versions of us, but 5,000, 50,000? What if we phase-shifted your vessels into a dimension where the laws of physics work differently? Where energy weapons become flowers and shields become soap bubbles?" "Ah, that's impossible. You're bluffing." Chen's expression finally changed, showing something that might have been sadness. "3 of your scout ships encountered human vessels near our outer colonies last year. They never reported back. Would you like to know why?" Without waiting for an answer, she gestured again. Part of the main view screen shifted, showing sensor logs from a Vorthan scout ship. The recording showed the scout approaching a human mining vessel, weapons charging, demands for surrender, and then, the scout ship turned inside out. Not violently, not destructively, but like a complex geometric shape unfolding in impossible ways. The crew was unharmed but found themselves floating in space, surrounded by what had been the interior of their ship, now spread out like a dissected diagram. The human mining vessel collected them, treated them kindly, and sent them home on a shuttle, with their memory cores wiped, but their lives intact. "We could have killed them," Chen said quietly. "Instead, we showed mercy and hoped their disappearance would be taken as a warning." Apparently it wasn't. The council chamber had gone deathly quiet. Even the ever-bubbling aquatic representatives had stilled their constant motion. "But that's not the real demonstration," Chen continued. "That's just parlor tricks compared to what humanity truly discovered. You see, when you touch higher dimensions, you touch something else. Something that's been waiting." The pinprick doorways suddenly pulsed in unison, and through them came singing. Not sound, exactly, but something that registered as harmonious vibration in every consciousness present. "What is that?" Krextar whispered. "Neighbors," Chen replied. "Beings that exist primarily in higher dimensional space. Creatures of pure thought and concept. They've been aware of us. All of us. For longer than our civilizations have existed, but only humanity learned to talk to them." On every ship in the fleet, crew members reported the same phenomenon. Shadows that weren't shadows. Movements in peripheral vision, the sensation of being observed by something vast and incomprehensibly benign. "They mean no harm," Chen assured. "They're curious about you, as they were about us. But they've agreed to help us protect our home. You see, Ambassador, when you threaten humanity, you threaten their favorite conversation partners in the lower dimensions." Thanks for watching. We're courting too. I'm Stellar Zaladio. "This is madness," Admiral Korg said, but his voice had lost all its earlier bombast. "This is reality," Chen corrected. "A bigger, stranger reality than your council ever imagined. And now, you have a choice." The versions of the persistence began to merge back together, slowly reducing in number. The pinprick doorways started to close. The sense of otherworldly presence faded, though everyone who felt it knew they would never forget it. "What choice?" Krextar asked. "The same choice we made when we discovered we weren't alone in the universe. You can expand your understanding, embrace new possibilities, and grow beyond what you are. Or you can retreat into the familiar and pretend this never happened. And if we choose to attack?" Chen's expression was answer enough. "Then you'll learn why we only needed one ship. Because that ship can become any number. Because we have allies you can't see or understand. Because we've learned to fight in dimensions where your weapons don't exist. You're threatening the entire Galactic Council. No, Chen said softly. We're inviting you to join us in a larger universe. Your choice to see it as a threat says more about you than about us. She paused, then added, Humanity doesn't want to fight. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to meet new friends and discover new wonders. But we will defend ourselves, and we will do it in ways your military doctrines never imagined. The last of the doorways closed. The multiple versions of the persistence had merged back into one. Space returned to normal, leaving only the single human ship facing the Council fleet. Except now everyone knew it wasn't really just one ship. It was one ship that could be many. One ship that existed in more dimensions than they could perceive. One ship that represented a species which had taken an entirely different path to the stars. I need to consult with my government, Krextar said finally. Of course, Chen nodded. We'll wait. But Ambassador, when you make your report, make sure they understand. We didn't develop this technology to conquer or dominate. We developed it because we were curious about what else might be out there. The universe showed us wonders beyond imagination. It can show you too, if you're willing to see. The communication ended. In the council chamber, dozens of species tried to process what they had witnessed. Scientists babbled about impossible physics. Military officers recalculated every strategic assumption. Philosophers questioned the nature of existence itself. And in the middle of it all, Ambassador Krextar stared at the tactical display, where one human ship waited patiently for their answer. One ship that had just made their entire fleet irrelevant. One ship that had opened a door to a universe they never knew existed. One ship that forced them to confront a terrifying question. If humanity could do this, what else in the universe had they been too arrogant to notice? The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in progress for 12 hours. Representatives had been recalled from across the galaxy, traveling through quantum gates and hyperspace lanes to reach the capital station. The footage from the confrontation played on repeat, each viewing revealing new, impossible details that challenged fundamental understanding of reality. Ambassador Krextar stood before the full assembly, his scales shifting through patterns of exhaustion and determination. The question before us is not whether we can defeat humanity militarily. The demonstration made it clear that conventional warfare is meaningless against their capabilities. The question is, what do we do with this knowledge? We must study their technology, urged the Mechanoid Prime. Acquire it, reverse engineer it, integrate it into our own systems. You assume it's technology in the traditional sense, Professor Vrix interjected. She had spent the last hours analyzing every bit of data from the encounter. What if it's not something you can steal or copy? Captain Chen spoke of consciousness touching higher dimensions. What if the ability is inherent to their neural structure? To their way of thinking? To us, then we study them. Admiral Korg said bluntly. The old warrior had been subdued since the encounter. His earlier bluster replaced by cold pragmatism. Capture specimens, analyze their brains, understand what makes them different. And if their higher dimensional allies object? Krextar asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered the presence they had felt, the sense of being observed by something vast and incomprehensible. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Silica of the Crystalline Collective, we should consider a different approach. The humans offered partnership, not submission. They spoke of exploration and discovery. What if we actually listened to a species that just threatened our entire fleet? The Drokan representatives' mandibles clicked angrily. They defended themselves against our aggression, Silica countered. We demanded their surrender. We brought warships to their door. And they showed us we were children playing with toys, while adults watched from dimensions we couldn't see. A new voice entered the debate. Maybe you should ask humanity directly. True, every being in the chamber turned to the main display, where Captain Sarah Chen's image had appeared uninvited. But she wasn't on her ship. She was standing in what looked like an ordinary Earth living room, wearing civilian clothes, holding a cup of something steaming. "How are you accessing our secure channels?" the security chief demanded. "The same way I'm in two places at once," Chen replied, and the view shifted to show her also standing on the bridge of the Persistence. Both versions raised their cups in a small salute. "I'm sorry for the intrusion, but we've been monitoring your debate. We thought it might help if we answered some questions directly. This is a violation of," someone began. "Yes, it is," Chen agreed freely. "Just like your demand for our surrender was a violation. But sometimes violations lead to conversations, and conversations lead to understanding. So let's talk." Krextar stepped forward, seizing the diplomatic opportunity. "Captain Chen, help us understand. How did humanity develop these abilities? Our xenobiologists detected nothing unusual about your species during first contact." Chen smiled, and suddenly there were 5 versions of her, each in a different location. Her ship, the living room, what looked like a laboratory, a garden, and floating in open space without any protective gear. "Because you were looking for the wrong things," all versions said in unison before merging back to 2. "You scanned our bodies, our technology, our cities, but you never scanned our dreams." Dreams? Humans have always been dreamers. We looked at the stars and imagined sailing between them. We faced the impossible and asked, "What if?" We told stories about doors to other worlds long before we could build a door to the next room. Chen set down her cup. "When your explorers arrived, you confirmed something we had always suspected. We weren't alone. But you also confirmed something else. Every species we met thought about the universe in the same limited way." Limited? Admiral Korg's pride flared despite his subdued state. 3 dimensions. Linear time. Matter and energy as separate things. Consciousness as a byproduct of biology. Chen shook her head. "You built faster ships, bigger weapons, stronger shields, but all within the same conceptual framework. Like perfecting the horse-drawn carriage while never imagining the automobile. So you imagined something different," Professor Vrick said, leaning forward with intense interest. "We did more than imagine. We experimented. We meditated. We pushed consciousness to its limits, and beyond." The version in the laboratory gestured to complex equipment. "We discovered that human awareness could perceive higher dimensions during certain altered states. Dreams, deep meditation, near-death experiences. Artists and mystics had been touching these realms for millennia without understanding what they were accessing. And you turned mysticism into science?" "We proved that mysticism and science were viewing the same truth from different angles," Chen corrected. "Once we understood that consciousness could touch higher dimensions, we learned to do it deliberately. And once we could touch them." The laboratory version reached out and plucked something from empty air, a flower that couldn't exist, with petals that shifted through colors beyond normal perception. "We could bring back gifts. This is why you weren't afraid when we arrived," Krextar said, understanding dawning. "We had been expecting you for decades. The beings in higher dimensions told us about the Galactic Council, about your expansion, about your likely reaction to finding Earth." Chen's expression grew serious. "We had years to prepare, to debate, to decide how we would respond. And you chose to develop weapons." "No." Chen's voice was firm. "We chose to develop understanding. What you see as weapons are just tools of perception and interaction. We can defend ourselves, yes, but that's a side effect. The real purpose was to explore realities beyond the physical, to meet beings that exist as pure thought, to discover universes where mathematics sings and time flows backward." She paused, then added, "Do you know what we found in those higher dimensions? Beauty beyond description. Wisdom from civilizations that transcended physical existence eons ago. And warnings. Warnings? About species that lock themselves into single ways of thinking. About civilizations that become so rigid in their understanding that they can't adapt when the universe changes." Chen's expression grew somber. The galaxy is full of ruins, from species that achieved perfect mastery of three-dimensional physics and never looked beyond. The beings in higher dimensions have watched it happen over and over. You're saying we're doomed? The Etherian ambassador's form flickered with distress. I'm saying you're at a crossroads. The same one humanity faced when we discovered we weren't alone. You can continue as you are, perfecting technologies that are ultimately limited. Or, you can join us in exploring what lies beyond. And if we see this as a threat to our way of life, Admiral Korg asked, then you'll face the same fate as every rigid system when it meets a flexible one, Chen said simply. You'll become irrelevant. Not through conquest, but through obsolescence. The universe will move on without you. She let that sink in before continuing. But if you're willing to learn, to expand your thinking, to question your assumptions, then we can show you wonders. We can introduce you to beings that remember when your oldest species were young. We can teach you to slip between dimensions like walking through doorways. We can share the songs we've learned from entities made of living mathematics. At what cost? Krextar asked the crucial question. The only cost is letting go of the belief that you already understand everything important about reality, Chen replied. It means accepting that a young species from an unremarkable planet might have insights you missed. It means admitting that your great galactic council, for all its achievements, has been looking at the universe through a keyhole while pretending to see the whole room. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species were offended by the implications. Others were intrigued by the possibilities. A few were terrified by what accepting such a paradigm shift might mean for their societies. Through it all, Captain Chen waited patiently, sometimes as one person, sometimes as many, demonstrating with her very existence that the old rules no longer applied. Finally, Krextar called for order. Captain Chen, if we were to explore this possibility, how would we begin? Chen smiled, and suddenly she wasn't alone. Other humans appeared. Scientists, artists, children, elders, individuals from every walk of life. They stood in impossible spaces that connected to the council chamber through folds in reality. You begin by sending representatives to Earth. Not diplomats or soldiers, but your dreamers, your artists, your philosophers, those among you who have always felt that something was missing from the equations. The assembled humans spoke in harmony. We'll teach them to see with new eyes. And when they return to you, they'll carry the keys to doors you never knew existed. And if this is all an elaborate trap? Admiral Korg had to ask. Then, it's a trap that offers you the universe, Chen replied. But Admiral, ask yourself, if we wanted to conquer or destroy you, would we need elaborate schemes? We can exist in multiple places at once. We can step outside your reality and return anywhere we choose. We have allies that exist in realms where your weapons are meaningless. If conquest was our goal, we wouldn't need tricks. She paused, letting the logic settle in. We're offering you partnership because we learned something from our higher dimensional friends. The universe is vast and strange and wonderful. But it's also lonely when you explore it alone. We want companions for the journey. We want to share the amazement we felt when we first touched infinity. I need to ask, Professor Vrick said, her scientific curiosity overwhelming protocol. Is there a limit to these abilities? Can you reshape reality at will? There are rules, Chen admitted. Different rules than you know, but rules nonetheless. We can't violate certain fundamental principles, just work around them in ways you haven't considered. And the deeper you go into higher dimensions, the stranger and more dangerous it becomes. We've lost explorers who went too far and couldn't find their way back to baseline reality. So, it's not without risk. Nothing worthwhile ever is. But the rewards. The garden version of Chen gestured, and suddenly the council chamber was filled with a gentle breeze that carried scents from worlds that didn't exist in normal space. Colors that had no names painted themselves across the air. For just a moment, every being present felt the touch of infinite possibility. Then it was gone, leaving only memory and longing. That's just a taste, Chen said softly. A single drop from an ocean of wonders. And it's waiting for any species brave enough to expand their definition of possible. The debate continued for hours more. But the outcome was increasingly clear. Too many representatives had felt that moment of transcendence. Too many scientific minds were burning with questions. Too many philosophers were reconsidering fundamental assumptions. In the end, it was Ambassador Krextar who formally proposed the resolution. The Galactic Council acknowledges humanity's unique capabilities and extends an invitation for mutual cooperation and learning. We withdraw all demands for surrender and instead request cultural and scientific exchange. The vote wasn't unanimous. It never was. But it passed by a significant majority. Furthermore, Krextar continued, we formally request that humanity accept a seat on the Galactic Council, not as a protectorate, but as a full member species, to share their insights and help guide us into this broader understanding of reality. Chen's smile was warm and genuine. We accept, with one condition. The Council must understand that we're not teachers with all the answers. We're fellow students who happen to find a different textbook. What we discover together will be greater than what any of us could achieve alone. Agreed, Krextar said, and his scales shifted to the pattern of hope for the first time since the crisis began. Then we have work to do, Chen said. All her versions except one faded away, leaving just the woman on the bridge of the Persistence. Our ship will escort your representatives to Earth whenever you're ready. Choose your dreamers carefully. The universe they return to you will be larger than the one they leave. As the connection closed, the Galactic Council found itself facing a future none of them had imagined. Some species would embrace the change. Others would resist. A few would probably splinter, with some members reaching for the stars while others clung to the familiar. But the door had been opened. The greater universe had been revealed. And in space, one human ship, just one ship, had changed the course of galactic history not through force or conquest, but by showing them that everything they knew was only the beginning. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Persistence, looking at the stars with eyes that saw more than light. Her crew worked quietly around her, each one touching different dimensions as they guided their impossible ship through spaces that existed between spaces. Captain, her navigator reported, the Council fleet is dispersing. Several ships are already requesting permission to follow us to Earth. Granted, Chen said. And prepare the welcome protocols. We're about to have a lot of students. Do you think they're ready for what they'll learn? Chen considered the question. Were we ready when we first touched the infinite? No. But we learned. They will too. And maybe, with their help, we'll finally understand what our higher dimensional friends have been trying to tell us about what lies even beyond their realm. She smiled at the thought. Humanity had sent one ship to face the Galactic Council's ultimatum. One ship that became many. One ship that opened doors. One ship that offered not surrender or victory, but transformation. And in the end, one ship was all they needed. Because when you can touch infinity, when you can dance between dimensions, when you have the universe itself as your ally, numbers become meaningless. What matters is the willingness to dream, to reach, to imagine the impossible and make it real. The Persistence turned toward Earth, carrying with it the first representatives of species ready to expand their understanding. Behind them, the galaxy would never be the same. Ahead of them lay wonders that no amount of conventional technology could reveal. Humanity had answered the Galactic Council's demand for surrender with an invitation to transcendence, and the universe itself held its breath to see what they would discover together.